Well, Julian ultimately chose to upset the plea deal. He said, I plead guilty to journalism. Can you walk us through how the critical decision was reached? Was this something you decided collectively as a family?
It was it was the long road to get this plea deal. It was a very long road. As Julian's family and his advocates, we needed to create a political climate for this deal to be able to happen. And so it wasn't, just a sort of flick of a switch. Oh, we're going to do a deal. First, we had to unwind a lot of the demonization that had happened to Julian, because there was many, many years where the mainstream press, the corporate press, or the corporate media had demonized Julian. They had called him a spy. They'd called him a sexual pest, or that he was dirty, and all these things all these fake stories that they created in order to assassinate his character, to be able to lay these charges against him. So there'd been years of this wearing down of the political support for Julian, and that's one of the first things that we had to address. We had to get out to people. Like I said, we had to do hundreds and hundreds of events, talking to people face to face, talking to journalists, convincing journalists to come to our side. We made films. I produced a film called Ithaca about my family and their fight to free Julian. And there were many other films, other books. Nils Melzer, the UN Special Rapporteur on Torture, wrote a book about Julian's case. And so there was all this effort to rewrite the narrative around Julian's case, was crucial groundwork that needed to be laid before this plea deal could come about. And with all these tools, these films and books, we built a vast solidarity network around the world, a vast political network that we then activated, and we built it from the ground up. It didn't come from the top down. And so we had people who were advocating to their elected representatives, and then those elected representatives would get together, and then they would advocate to their leaders, their prime ministers or their presidents. And so we had this flow from the grassroots all the way to the top through the Prime Minister of Australia, but also to President Biden, who was the president at the time. And so we created the political space for this deal to be reached, and it was with the cooperation of the Australian government that it eventually happened. They acted as, I guess, a guarantor for Julian's safety. Julian was always very wary and distrustful of the United States government, I think for very good reason. And so any deal or any plea bargain with them could not be trusted. And so the Australian government came in and they acted as a guarantor for Julian's safety. And so that brought around the eventual end to his imprisonment. That government representation that was being able to be had at the top level for Julian really made a difference. But I say that, but I think it's important to remember that it didn't come from the top. It came from the bottom, that it was the grassroots efforts that made the people at the top take notice and actually do something. And I think for any movement, that is the way things are achieved. It's from that grassroots pressure, and we saw that in Australia just a couple of weeks ago for the March for Gaza. Julian and I and Stella and Julian's two kids led a march of 300,000 people across the Harbour Bridge in Sydney. It's called the March for Humanity against the starvation of children in Gaza. And the next day we saw a change in the Australian government's position, and now they're going to recognise Palestine at the UN. So you see these direct correlations from grassroots activism to political change, which I think is very important for people out there to understand how things actually work and that the power is with them, right? Like the power is with us a lot of the time we're told that the power sits above us, but really it comes from the people.